Today we're going to talk about loving God versus loving your neighbor. All right, Matthew 22, verse 35 through 39. And one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And he said to him, You shall love your Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. For this is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. So why are we talking about this with the verses? The first two commandments are God, neighbor, period. Well, the reason why we're talking about this is because it's not that simple, and we're realizing that a lot of people are loving their neighbor first and trying to love God second. So let's talk about how do we know if we are loving our God first or loving our neighbor first. To do that, let's first talk about what love is not, as outlined in the Bible. Love is not tolerating, ignoring, being in agreement to, compromising with, participating with others in, or co-signing sin. Stay away from sin. Okay, so let's talk about what loving God means. First off, it's to be in agreement with His word. So if you are loving your neighbor to the point that it causes you to be in disagreement, disbelief, or doubt God's truth, congratulations, you are not loving God first. Loving God looks like this: obeying His word. Okay? So if loving your neighbor means that you disobey or live a lifestyle of disobedience, you are no longer upholding the first commandment to love your God. Loving your God means to flee or abstain from sin. To flee. So if you are loving your neighbor looks like engaging and joining in the lifestyles of sin or ungodly behavior, you are no longer loving God. Okay? Loving God means to not twist God's word. Okay? Don't change it. So if loving your neighbor means that you're twisting God's word, you're watering it down, or you're redefining it so that it is inclusive. Okay? Hello, progressive Christians. You are no longer loving God, because in order to love your neighbor, you had to water down His truth. Then no, that's not the neighbor you need to be participating with. Loving God means to dissociate from the patterns of the world. So if loving your neighbor means you're conforming to the patterns of the world, not to offend or rebuke or correct, you're guilty of breaking the first commandment. And finally, we're called to take up our cross and follow Him. So if loving your neighbor means you're taking up their cross, but you're denying your own, you are guilty of breaking the first commandment, and you are not loving God.